Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be creating the appearance of the graphics widget, and then in the next video, we're going to be setting up the code. The reason I'm breaking up into two parts is because though the appearance won't take that long, I want to cover all the code that's related to the graphics widget in one video, and if I cover both of them in one video, it's going to be an extremely long video, whereas I would rather have it be one short video and then one medium long video instead. So with that, let's get started. So we're going to open up the graphics widget, and then the first thing we're going to add is the canvas panel. And then after adding the canvas panel, we're going to add an overlay. Then we'll select the overlay, and then by the anchors, we're going to shift control and then select it to cover the whole screen. And then the next thing we're going to add is a size box. And we'll select the size box and then set the horizontal and vertical alignment to the center. Then we're going to do a width and height override. The width is going to be 1500, and the height is going to be 750. And then the next thing we're going to add is a vertical box, and then within the vertical box we're going to add a horizontal box, and then we're going to add a text to the horizontal box, and then we're going to add another horizontal box to the horizontal box, and then within the horizontal box we're going to have a button, and on the button we're going to have a text, and then we're going to have another text in the horizontal box, and then we're going to take the button and then duplicate it and then move it to the bottom of the hierarchy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select the text, the first text, we're going to set it to fill. Then we're going to select the horizontal box, set it to fill, select the button, set it to fill, the text in the middle, set it to fill, and then the other button, set it to fill. The button on the right, we're going to set its horizontal alignment to the right, the button on the left to the left, and then the text is going to be in the center. And then we're going to rename the first text block, we're going to rename this to overall, and then we're going to take the text block on the button, and then we're going to change the text to less than, and then the other text we're going to change this to greater than. So with this new setup, what we're going to do is we're going to increment the quality of the setting. In Unreal Engine, it goes between 0 and 4. What we're going to do is we're going to have a button that controls an integer variable that if you press the button on the left, it's going to subtract 1 from the integer value until it reaches 0, which is going to be the lowest quality. The same goes for the button on the right. If you press it, it's going to increment the integer value by 1 until you reach 4. And then we're going to limit it to just exist between 0 and 4 for all the settings that we're going to make available to the player. So now that we have that done, we're just going to rename the buttons. So the first button, we're going to call it overall minus to signify that it's going to be reducing the integer value. And then the other one, we're going to call it overall plus because it will be increasing the integer value. And then when you set it to is variable, same for the other button, is variable. And then for the text block, what we're going to do is we're going to add a binding to it, which is going to correspond to the integer value, which will then tell the player which level of quality they have selected, but that we'll cover in the next video. And then we're going to just collapse everything. And then the next thing we're going to add is a border. So we're going to add that to the vertical box. And then we're going to select the border. We're going to give it a top heading of 10, a bottom heading of 20. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the horizontal box that we created, and then we're going to control D, and then we're going to drag it to below the border so that it's underneath it. And then just to differentiate between some of the settings, we're going to change the text size to 38, make it a little bit bigger. So then with that done, we can collapse overall horizontal box with the new horizontal box. We're just going to rename the text, and the first one is going to be anti-aliasing, and then we're going to rename the buttons as well. I'm going to rename the button to AA for anti-aliasing, same for the other button. And then what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate the horizontal box a couple more times. So we're going to select it and then control D, and then we're going to rename the block. Actually, before we do that, let's rather just it's anti-aliasing, global illumination, reflections, shadows, shading, view distance, and vsync. So those are going to be all the ones they're going to give the player access to. And then what they're going to do is, in actuality, we're going to select all of these, and then we're going to right click and then wrap with vertical box. So they're all covered in the vertical box, and then we're going to set them all to fill. Then we're going to select the vertical box and then set it to fill. And then yet again, all the horizontal boxes that are inside, we're gonna set the vertical alignment to center so that it looks a bit more appealing. And then now what we're gonna do is we're gonna rename all the buttons and all the text blocks. So the second text block is gonna be global illumination. And then the button, we're gonna rename this to global. The one after the global illumination is the reflections. And then rename the buttons to reflections. And then the next one after that, after reflections, is the shading. And then the buttons as well to shading. And then after shading, we have the shadows and the buttons as well. Then after shadows, we have the view distance. And then the button, I'm just going to call it view. And then the last one is going to be the vsync. And then I'll just rename the buttons to sync. And then that will be it for the appearance. And then in preparation for the next video, we're gonna go and create the integer values. What you can also do is we can organize these into their appropriate parts. You can do that if you want to. I'm gonna do it simply because I like to keep things organized. So for the view, we're gonna go over to the category and then rename it to view. Drag the other view value in there. And then for the sync, we're gonna do the same thing. Now that I'm done organizing everything, I'm going to be creating the variables. So up at the variable, create a new variable. We are going to start with the view. So rename this new variable to view. And then we're going to change the variable type to integer, single type integer. And then we're going to duplicate it for as many times as they are. Except for the vsync, the vsync is going to be a boolean. So the vsync is either on or off. We're not going to use an integer value for that. But for the shadows, shading, reflections, overall, global, and NT, we're all going to have an integer for those. We're going to control D, and then we're going to do global, control D, NT, control D, reflections, control D, shading, control D, shadows, and then it's the one that I missed. Okay, the overall. Okay, then we're just going to add them into the categories. And then we're going to create the final variable, which is the vsync, and this one's going to be of type boolean. Then add that to the category, and then now we have all the variables that we're going to need in the next video. Hey, this is a quick post recording insert. There's one that I actually forgot to do above the anti-aliasing, so we're going to look for the horizontal box with the anti-aliasing, select it, and then control D. And then we're going to select buttons and then just make sure everything is fine. So what we're going to do is the new anti-aliasing has been created. We're going to rename this to resolution. I forgot to add this during the video. And then just rename the buttons as well from AA to resolution. And then compile. Then we're going to head over to the event graph. And then we are going to drop the resolution in its own category. And then we're also going to create an integer variable for it. So just take any of the ones that's closest to you, control D, and then just rename it to resolution, and then compile and save. And then that will be it for the post edit. And then in the next video, we're gonna do all the code. So we're gonna do the setup, the saving, and the loading of the code. So it's gonna be quite a long video, but that brings us to the end of this one, and until the next video.